you may be overwhelmed by the amount of cleaners available if you're a home winemaker or a home brewer. But after many years of trying things and research, I've really honed in on two that I use as my workhorses, and they might actually surprise you a little bit. I'll start with the heavy, gritty kind of cleaning that you have to do. And there's a lot of stuff available out there. There's Be Bright, One Step, PBW. These are kind of your oxidative, heavy alkaline cleaners, and they all honestly work great. I have no complaints about any of those, but I do a lot of cleaning. I use this stuff in pretty serious bulk when you're getting into cleaning these big wine presses and stuff. And I've ultimately honed in on OxyClean free. So this is just OxyClean with no fragrance or anything, and essentially it is, I mean, I'm not going to say it's the same as those other cleaners, but it's really close. This is going to have your same sodium carbonate type stuff, sodium percarbonate. What that does when you mix it with water is it creates peroxide. So these are really great cleaners. They really help bubble everything out. And this costs like $6 for this big bin. So when you're cleaning your huge wooden wine press, you go through a good bit of this, and I like to use it kind of like a ton of it. So I don't want to be spending tons of money on it. I will say you want to mix it with really hot water, because especially that sodium percarbonate, probably the most awesome ingredient in here, doesn't really dissolve very easily unless it's in really hot water. The dosage isn't really that critical, but I usually use about a half a scoop to a gallon. Unless it's something like super grimy, maybe I'll use as much as a full scooper to a gallon. I use this for if I've got something that's just really dirty, like say I buy a used carboy and it's just grimy, I'll use this. Anything that's stained with wine, like wood will get stained, it turns kind of purple, eventually turn black. I'll use this on it. It pretty much bleaches it right out. Now, some of these types of cleaners, whether they're called One Step or whatever, they'll say no need to rinse, but especially if you're a winemaker, I always say rinse, and there's two reasons. One, with the really strong alkaline powders, you don't want to shift your pH up. So if, well, let's just like look at the ingredients here. Sodium carbonate peroxide, which is the sodium percarbonate. Those are really the main two ingredients in here. They are gonna make a pH probably of like 10 plus. And if you've got a wine that's say like 3.7 and it nudges it up to 3.8 because you had a lot of leftover sodium carbonate in here, it puts it at a really dangerous spot. The second reason I like to rinse is because of the peroxide that this forms when mixed with water. It's a strong oxidizer. So with wine, obviously oxidation is one of the things you're always kind of trying to, ward off. Peroxide is a great oxidizer, and it will oxidize away your sulfites like nothing. Actually, if you want to remove sulfites from wine, you can use hydrogen peroxide and it'll blow them right away. I wouldn't really recommend it because it's going to oxidize more than just the sulfites. But this is my ultra budget home wine and beer maker workhorse cleaner. If you're a brewery, it's probably not EPA registered to be used, so you probably have to stick to the stuff that's labeled right, but for home, this stuff is great. Now, before I get to the sanitizer that I use for just about everything, I want to mention my Patreon page where you can find a lot more content, especially you get into this really niche content for winemaking. You'll find it on my Patreon page, patreon.com/makewine. And I want to give a shout out to two patrons, Adam Schindler and Tyler Thackeray. Thank you so much for supporting the home winemaking channel and just helping to make this work. On YouTube, it's always tough these days, and that's why you'll see a lot more content on Patreon anymore. Now I'll jump into the workhorse sanitizer, and if you have made beer or wine for any amount of time, you probably could have guessed what I'm gonna say here, and that's Star San. This also says no rinse, and in this case, I am somewhat willing to not rinse it. There's some reasons I like to give it at least a little bit of a rinse. Now, this is not really a cleaner. Now, your OxyClean, that's like a cleaner and sanitizer. This, don't expect to get any dirt or grime off with it. You're basically just killing those microbes, and a lot of times that's all you really need to do. This is kind of opposite of that in that instead of being strong alkaline, it's a relatively strong acid. So in either of those cases, things just don't really like to live in there. Because wine's pretty acidic, it's not that big a deal to, have a little bit of acid residue on the glass, and it's so minuscule by the time it all gets mixed in. I think it's phosphorus acid is the main active ingredient. I'm not even going to try to, well, I'll try to say this. Decylbenzene sulfonic acid, 15%, phosphoric acid, 50%, and then you dilute the heck out of this, I think 1 ounce to 5 gallons. The one sort of reason I like to rinse it, though, is it seems like it has some pretty strong surfactants in it, just to get it to really stick to the surface. That's kind of that soapy kind of look or feeling that you get out of it. And I just don't really want that in my bottle of wine. I don't want it to make some kind of weird surface bubbles because maybe the surfactants have messed with the surface tension. So I always give it a little rinse, but I don't feel the need to rinse it maybe as thoroughly as I would with this stuff that is in the oxidizer family. What I'll use this for too is always put it in I have a spray bottle of it laying around. I give things a spritz. During wine season, I'll make a few gallon bucket of it, just dip things in it. If I'm cleaning like my bottler, my vacuum bottler, I'll just pump some Star San through it. So awesome workhorse sanitizer. I bought this bottle forever ago, and I think this makes like hundreds of gallons, this bottle. So when you buy it, just look at the size that you're buying, because you might be buying an amount that like a huge winery would need, and you're, gonna do 5 gallons at a time. So keep that in mind. I hope this is helpful for you. And if you have anything better than what I just suggested, I'd love to hear it down in the comments. Thanks for watching.